Welcome to Devalue with Mike and Caroline, the place where we talk about art and money and how creative people are navigating the ever-changing landscape of trying to make a living for their work.
We're going to be interviewing all types of creative people, and we'll be talking about all types of issues that creative people face. We hope you'll get something out of it. We're excited to welcome you to Devalued. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Caroline.
Who are we talking with today?
We are talking with Pete Kember, who is also known as Sonic Boom or Spectrum, EAR. He's from the world-famous group Spacemen 3, and he's collaborated with everybody from Panda Bear to Beach House to MGMT, and this is a really exciting conversation.
Awesome. Let's get into it.
Cool. Just very easy. It's supposed to be easy going. Yeah.
Coming back. Sorry.
And our listeners are like people who are like creatives who are, trying to find a life for themselves in the arts.
So it's an interesting and strange world at the moment. I think I know a lot of people I know a bunch of people, I won't say a lot, in their 20s and 30s. And it appears to me that one of the major things they're taught at music schools and art schools these days is that your major way to exist is going to be through funding and through grants from organizations. And I was a little bit involved in that world with the EAR project, where it seemed to appeal to that sort of art center sort of venue crowd, that sort of presentation. And there was I noticed there were people, this is going back into the 90s, who already really existed just in that domain. And I recognized I didn't want to be part of it at all. And I thought it was really bad for your mindset and I think it's a totally surreal thing. I totally believe in funding for the arts. I do, absolutely, and for musicians and artists. But mostly what I see is people of a certain class, more or less middle class kids, passing around money amongst other more or less middle class kids who are, gone to good art schools and good music schools. And I'm not putting down anyone who's gone through this at all. I feel sorry for them, because I think seems to have become part of the syllabus. And I know from one time trying to go this route with Delia Derbyshire, where we were going to do an electronic music festival. And we just went to the local arts council annual start of the season funding meeting. And it was really clear that it was quite a very specific task to apply for these things. And it wasn't necessarily merit-based. And it was basically, and a lot of the people there had done it a lot of times before. They were clearly quite professional at it, and just their questions were about tweaks in this year's system. And it's a very strange world to me. I don't think it's good for people's mental health personally, because I think it's I don't know. You talk about you mentioned career. I never planned to have a career. I always just did what I wanted to do, and then at a certain point in the rear view mirror, people start saying, "Oh, your career," and I say, "Oh, I guess it is." I guess after 20 years or something, people start saying that. But if I had have had a career plan, I would have been severely disappointed at times. I can guarantee you, because there were some years where to do what I wanted to do and do what I wanted to do without trying to modify it, from maybe making more money or things like that. I mean, I ate a lot of boil in the bag beef and cheap pizzas, I can tell you, and sometimes to buy equipment as well. I ate shit food for 6 months to buy some things. So, but there's a reality to that, and you sort of even if you're standing on slightly flimsy legs, they're your legs, and no one can take them away from you. So that was a long answer, wasn't it?
Well, one of the best lines on your new song with Panda Bear is "One dude's dream is another's day."
Mm-hmm.
That's such a beautiful poetic line. And I feel like, for people listening to this, they look at someone like you who's managed to do everything they've wanted to do on their own terms. What does it mean to be able to do that? Like, what does it mean, like, to have a life where you're choosing projects based on your own passions and vision?
But all in the bag beef. Well, people say, "Oh, well, what would what advice would you give to people?" And I'd say, be uncompromising, because it might not work out tomorrow. It might not work out next week. It might, but it might not. And just have this in mind. And if you think of some people that, might be, kind of almost zeitgeisty now, like Throbbing Grizzle. I mean, those were people who clearly were just doing what they wanted to do, and they didn't give a damn. And I'm old enough to remember that era in the UK, and they were not a successful or popular band. I'm sure they had their hardcore little cult following, but over time they found a lot of people all over the world that think they're the most awesome thing ever. So, and they would only exist because they followed their dream, as it were. But yeah, I find it hard to, and I don't, I don't, be careful what you wish for. I don't think your life's any better because people perceive you to be successful. And I would say, actually, maybe the more successful they are, the more miserable their life is. And I don't know what success brings into people's life that's good. They can't go anywhere. They have to, they're rich, so they're a target. They've made themselves a target by wanting to cling on to loads of money, way more than they'll probably ever need. Be careful what you wish for. I mean, I wouldn't wish for that. I think there's a certain point where you're happy in life, and you're if you're making more money than you need, do something good with it. Do something useful with it. That extra zero on your bank account is going to make your life tougher, not better. There's a certain threshold for me, but then I don't have a lust for speedboats or second hands or things like that. So.
A lust for speedboat sounds like a good name for an album.
Do you consider yourself successful by your own metrics?
I suppose a little bit. Yeah, I guess I do. I've been lucky, and through the English language, for sure, a little bit, through the internet, for sure. Some little bunch of dysfunctional kids from rugby who clearly were dysfunctionally magnetized towards each other. I had a funny little band that wasn't especially popular locally or with their friends, but they stuck to it because they believed in it, and Shazam, So, there's some, I mean, we were, I've always had and use this word lightly, but a work ethic. I mean, I joke that I work hard not to have a real job, and I had a couple of real jobs, not for very long, luckily, and it was enough inspiration to be able to. But it's different for different people, and I'm lucky in that I like all different aspects of the media, and I like making videos, and I like the photo sessions and things, and where they are, and what time of day they happen, and all these different things are important to me, and weren't always in the same way, but I like the different aspects of stuff. which, for a musician at least, there's a lot of that. You're usually in studio mode, promo mode, or touring mode, or off switch mode. Those really are the only four modes, I feel, if you're doing it every year in, year out, I think.
So like when you're releasing a new record, like you're about to release a new record with Panda Bear, how do you measure the success of that, especially in an era where streaming and like people could put a song on like, music for guacamole, or, a playlist, or like vibes for nachos or whatever?
Well, I missed. It could be, the music could be used to advertise stuff.
Yeah, like how do you measure the success of an album when like songs are just like cold into these like weird playlists?
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea. Where do playlists exist?
Like on Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah. I have an allergic reaction even to the word Spotify, so I definitely don't use it.
Yeah. So how do you, when you're releasing something new, like what do you hope for it?
Well, I mean, I guess that's a long, slow process for me, because my thing is I like to, if I can get something with a vocal, the first time I sing it into the microphone, if I'm happy with it, bar a couple of timing bits, some tuning bits, and a couple of bits I can fix with editing, I'll go with that every time. I like the early instinctive things, and I just know from experience, sometimes I think it's really important when you're recording someone to record the first thing they do. Because people go, oh, just let me run through it. I mean, even if you say yes, record it anyway. And even if they don't know, it's many times and even if you don't get exactly what you want from it, there's a chance that they did something when they were trying to figure it out that they discounted, but actually was really awesome. And then when they come back in, you say, check that out. And they're, oh, yeah. So I've always been a firm believer in that, especially with tape, because it was a more complicated process, and editing and dropping in and dropping out were all fraught. So you were trying to get as good takes as you can.
We wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you live your life. It seems that you've let your creativity and your projects kind of guide you through this journey. And that's fascinating to me. I think that's something that a lot of us strive for. And I'm curious how you have done that.
Over the years, or recently, or?
Well, I guess financially speaking, we think a lot about how money can impact a person's creative life and general life, and it seems like that doesn't really play into how you make your decisions.
It's different for different people. Some people can have to work some miserable day job that they hate, but at weekends when they let off steam, you're going to get something just like that wouldn't happen otherwise. And I'd say a little bit with we're talking about the creative thing and what you hope for when you make an album. When it's a slowly evolving thing that you slowly get to see, of course, as the songs go down and different overdubs go down. But I know with this album, with Noah, the Reset album, I credit most of how it turned out, which I'm super pleased with, to COVID. And I've worked with him before in the studio, and he can be a hoot. It's not a dude who's a hoot in public much, but in private, in the studio, he is really, can be quite hilarious. But of course, it was in the middle of lockdown. we were doing it to try and, keep sane a little bit. But I mean, both of us were super bummed, of course, the whole time. There was so much miserable shit going on everywhere, not just COVID and Trump. It was probably, I think it was, it was before Trump went. So, there was a whole load of really Brexit as well, and the whole sort of mindset, right-wing mindset, suddenly spiking up at that point. And there was just, in the way it was affecting our friends and family and different stuff going on around, there was a lot of tough stuff, almost daily tough stuff. And I know we were both super crushed by it. And it didn't, when we were making the record, it felt like we were just sort of like guided by wires. I mean, for me at least, I think with him, from how quickly he would do stuff and how we would, I'm not usually a keyboard preset dude at all, but preset 1 was good to go on. We turned on a new synth I had, and preset 1, Noah played something. We're like, okay, preset 1 is the first time for everything. It's a perfect signifier of this moment in a weird way. And we were very psyched about doing it. I mean, we were enjoying it, of course, but we were really unpsyched about it. But then when we'd listen to it back and realize what we had, we were like, fuck, all the shit we thought was placeholders, don't change it. So it's a funny world of creativity. And I don't think having being rich, being successful makes you more creative. I do not believe that. I think I think it's borne out a little bit by the more successful and rich you are as a musician, probably the more people you hire to write your songs for them, write all the riffs, do all the programming, big teams on many of these songs. So, which is always, I always have to, I mean, I'm not much of a back patter, but one thing I'm always, because you're in the same domain as all this stuff where they're spending a massive amount on doing it, and you're doing it in little glorified home studios, and the studio I use here as well in Sintra, Black Sheep Studios, it's a modest studio. It's a very affordable, modest studio, but a good one as well. So it's interesting to sometimes, Jim Dickinson, who was a producer, he was originally on Sun Records, actually. So he has a long Memphis history and was involved with Stax Records and did records with Primal Scream, Spiritualized. I did a record with him. I think John Spencer did a record with him. He did records with loads of people. But he said to me, he was a pretty hilarious, straight-talking dude. And he was like, if you got the song, everything else is just detail. It ain't going to make it, and it probably won't break it. And it's to your taste, but you got to have the song. And when I sent Noah the loops for these tracks, which were, mostly just 2-chord repeated loops. I mean, I think, well, you could say go on. It's kind of 1 chord with a flick, I'd call it. But he really, as soon as he did his vocal part, he created an arrangement in a song just with his vocal parts, nothing else, no percussion, everything else was added afterwards. And it was, I, again, would put it down to COVID a little bit. I was like, every time he sent each song through, I was like, what the fuck happened to Noah? This is fucking, I mean, I love his music anyway. And I was like, lyrically, vocally, the range he's using. I mean, he's always been an awesome singer. But I was just like, oh my God, there's new depth to it. And yeah, it was awesome.
And you mentioned COVID, and your last album, All Things Being Equal, came out during like the height of lockdown here. And I remember when it first came out, I would like take long walks around my neighborhood, listening to it over and over again, because there was like a little moment when it seemed like we could really change the way everything was structured, maybe make the world more fair. There was a really idealistic moment that was happening. And then, of course, we fucked everything up and didn't do any of that. But how...
I'm not so sure about that. Because what I think, whilst the process of COVID was miserable for everybody, sitting on the naughty step for a couple of years, surprise, none of us kids wanted to do that. But I think it made a lot of people change their lives. And I know my wife retrained during COVID. I know other people that did. And some people broke up with their partners. Many of them probably should have done anyway. It probably forced something that was not all maybe, but some. I think it just sort of made people reevaluate their lives and not just be clocking in every day like it's the same old, give or take, the usual highs, lows, and heavenly blows that we're meant to deal with in life. So I think we'll see. With this album, me and Noah decided early on that we would give a large percentage of the proceeds from it to MAPS, who are doing just like amazing work, fixing people, traumatically stressed people with PTSD, and with therapized MGMT sessions. They're just having like stunning results and just like out of the league of other normal, what we would consider our normal pharmacology, where people don't have to keep, they don't keep taking it. It's 3 sessions and the results apparently get stronger the further away they get from it, not less. So there, and we looked into all sorts of sociological charities, and it's a minefield. It really is, and everything about MAPS is just screams these dudes are awesome, and they're just trying to fix people, take people with PTSD and make them not only them, they have kids and they pass it on. And, pretty much most of our behavior is essentially learned. A lot of it from our parents, a lot of it from our peer group, but some of it's biological, of course, from our DNA, of course, imparts certain things about our physiology and things that become part of our personality. But essentially, behaviors learned. If you have traumatized people out there in society, it just grows, it gets passed on. And I think that's where a little bit where we're at, is that this has been going on for hundreds of years, 250 years at least, since at least the Industrial Revolution. And I'm not saying everyone's life was perfect before, but I think there's just been a lot of accumulated dysfunction passed on slowly but surely. And I think it gets added on easier than it gets taken off. So to take some of that out of the system, it was an easy decision for us to support it. Sorry, these are long answers, aren't they?
No, they're really great.
Yeah.
Did you intentionally opt out of like big business, or was that just part of your personality and it just kind of happened?
I just think that we're brought up to believe that having money and having possessions and big houses and all these things is something to be that will make you happy. And I live in an area full of people who have massive second homes out here, and I look at them, and mostly, not universally, but mostly, they don't look a happy bunch. They just don't look a happy bunch. It doesn't, from my experience with people, I just, I don't think it's the way. So I don't think everything should be about business and it's all inconsequential and, well, I'm just making money, it's business. I think, again, there's a limit. You have to say, well, how much money do you need to make? If you're going to make merchandise, which really you're creating something pretty much, let's face it, just for the, I know people dig it and stuff, but you are kind of creating something just for the sake of creating it beyond what the real product is, which is meant to be the music. It's what sort of ancillary, 360 tie-in sort of thing. And I mean, I love making all these things, I have to tell you, so it's quite hard for me. But I also love plastics, but I also have big issues with plastics and how we use plastics. And so, yeah, I have to battle with these things. But I just, I don't feel the need to overly try and make money from stuff. And I'm pretty sure I can speak to Noah, from Noah as well, that we both feel lucky to be able to do what we do. We've been lucky to have been moderately successful, and it's yeah.
So
I just don't feel the need to do it, I'm afraid.
So if money's not the goal for you, what is?
Well, I think, well, just not to have a relatively happy life. I don't believe being happy the whole time is anything but could be some sort of induced state. I don't think that's the way it should be. And things should have their ups and downs. So you have no perception of the ups if there's no downs, and the same contrast in things in music or in art, or is really, red's awesome, but red next to black, now that's really something. So these different things are some of my most what's the word? Some of my friends who have the most, what I would say, some of my most stable friends. It doesn't sound good, does it? It's suggesting I have unstable friends, but some of my friends that had the most, really seemed to be focused and really, really awesome, positive, sure people, said they thought they went mad during COVID. And I personally think the effects of it will take a while to, I felt it was a bit like being a cork on an ocean. Some days it was very stormy, and some days it was a bit calmer, but there was pretty much always some bobbing. And I think the waters might have to still for some time for the effects to totally disappear from that. In society in general, I would imagine.
And you mentioned MAPS, which is such an awesome organization. And could you ever imagine a time like 20 years ago where, like, in the state of Oregon, they're talking about like legalizing psilocybin, and it looks like it's going to happen. It looks like there's a lot of places where psychedelic drugs are going to be legalized finally. Could you, does that blow your mind?
No, it always blew my mind that it was any other way, because anything that A has DNA, right? Anything that's a natural substance and plant, those haven't historically been so much problem in society. It's the nitrode, we're not talking coca leaves, we're talking cocaine hydrochloride, and we're not talking opium or poppies. We're talking diamorphine hydrochloride or diamorphine sulfate. So we've done this massive. I was watching this program about the wars on drugs, and each time there's been a war on drugs, the strength of drugs has warp factored each time. And here we are in the fentanyl world in the States. Oxycontin just apparently anyone can get them anywhere, anytime they like. They seem to be, a mass epidemic. And people, because it's pills and pharmaceutical, they think it's different. But yeah, it's insane. So I think all those things, and also I think if drugs are decriminalized, I think they're far less attractive to people in general. I think it's a better way to go, and not spend the money on policing and trying to deal with minor bullshit, really, that never has any effect at all, never did, never will, and actually spend it on doing useful programs. And because they had in Portugal here, they had in the, I'm not sure if it was the early 90s, it might have been the late 80s, 1% of the population were heroin addicts. They had, I think it's the highest statistic for any country ever. They had a massive, as there was all over Europe, and I'm sure in the States and places as well, there was a massive heroin epidemic from the early 80s pretty much through the early 90s for sure. So they changed their laws and decriminalized it. It's not criminal to possess any drugs here. Although there are still some limits on the amount that you can have. And weirdly, on things like weed and hash, I forget what it is. Something, I think it's only 7 or 10 grams for hash. And that's quite a lot of hash, but not that much. And I think it's about an ounce of weed, it might be 28 to 30 grams. It might be 30 grams. Yeah. But they rather than, the police and jail aspect, they put the money into, if they do think people have a problem with it and they come across people with drugs and they think they have a problem, they send them to counseling and they put the money into that side of it, which is clearly the better way to deal with most like some crimes like that, rather than putting people in jail, which is just like, seems to be just like adding fuel to the fire to me. Put them in jail with a bunch of other people who know a bunch of tricks, and in a totally dysfunctional, miserable situation, especially for drugs. I mean, putting people in jail for drugs, insane to me. But here we go, slowly catch a monkey. So yeah, that's good in Oregon. Yeah, I didn't know that was happening. Yeah.
I hope it'll be good for society in general.
Make people nicer.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I've said since the 80s. If you have to go to imagine a pharmacist to get your drugs, he is actually going to be paying a little bit more attention to stuff and maybe give you information you need, and maybe have a little bit of a welfare in mind. Whereas your drug dealer and your street dealer, see how that plays out,
So
looking over the shoulder, they got other stuff to do.
So a lot of your messages, at least a lot of the lyrics on the last album, All Things Being Equal, were very aspirational. Like, just imagine and make it about the way that you live. Like, two of my favorite songs on that album. Are you optimistic about the future?
Post the end of humanity or before the end? Yeah, there's some days where I think the best thing that can happen to this planet is humanity do whatever they have to do, destroy enough of the ecosystem and the seas and the food stocks to kill the whole race, although it probably wouldn't. And the planet will recover, actually. I mean, it's been through some crazy shit in the last billion years, so we're a little blip on. We think we're really significant, and we're the kings of the world. But But no, but my caveat to that is, I think you have to try to be optimistic, and you have to point in that direction. And I know Buckminster Fuller from reading about him. There was a point in his life, if I remember the story correctly, he wanted to kill himself. He looked out, and this is in the 20s or something. It might be his 40s actually, but he was just seriously depressed about what he saw around him on the planet and the way things were going, and the acceleration of things and where it was clearly leading. And he realized I think he had a young kid at the time and wife, and he realized that that was a pointless thing to do, totally pointless, and that he might as well just put his energy into trying to change that and trying to do things in a way that he saw and thought were the way that could still be useful for people, and we could still function, exist, but without the toxicity from different things, financial system, all sorts of different things. But so I was sort of, I can resonate with that. You gotta die trying. I think he also said the difference, the difference between oblivion and utopia will be hard fought until the last moment. Like, this isn't going to be an easy race, guys. So,
well, in all this bleakness, is art and music your bright spot?
Yeah, it's actually really hard for me when I wear different hats at different stages in making my own records and recordings, and it's an uncomfortable process doing it. It doesn't feel comfortable, and I've repeated this a few times before, but I've seen a couple of people say it, but I saw David Bowie said, well, someone said to him, "When did you know it was really like going well in the studio? When was it?" And he said, "Whenever I felt I was a little bit out of my depth and my feet couldn't touch the bottom." And I was like, that's kind of the way I feel. I just feel like it's something a little bit scary about it. But then I just have to do what I do instinctively, and I'm not really sure what I've done. And then I have to, the next day or a couple of days later, I'll go back and evaluate it, and then usually it'll be good to go. But it doesn't feel like that when I do it. It takes me a while to, because some of the stuff as well, a lot of it is done with editing. The arrangements and stuff are pretty heavily edited, and if one chorus is, the best chorus will become all the choruses, stuff like that. I like that kind of, get an instinctive performance and then make the best out of it that you can. But everyone works in different ways. I've never seen anyone else work like that. It's a kind of, so I never really think of myself much as a musician. I'm someone who does it, but I don't really have musical training. It's all instinctive for me. So, but I work with Guillaume Gonsalves, who engineers for me, does have musical training, and sometimes he'll go, "Oh, yeah, it's that note," or so it's good. I can go in with the instinctive thing, and occasionally he'll say to me, "That third chord is that," and I'm like, "No, actually, it isn't. It's this one. It is this one, I'm sure." But having sometimes it's good to be questioned on things sometimes, because then you really have to figure it out. And go, no, I'm sure I prefer that too. Or you record them both and decide the next day. It's the ideal. Yeah.
Do you think being such a collaborative person has increased your appreciation of music?
No, because I always really appreciate, even before I was in a band, music always just did something magical for me, and it still does. It's still the music I like to listen to, or things that really, once I really like something, it has the effect endlessly for me. So, and yeah, but working with other people, yeah, I mean, my appreciation of the way other people work has definitely improved. Yeah, I really like working with different people, and for me, doing what I do the whole time would be the most boring fucking thing in the world to me. I mean, I don't want to do that. That's why I like doing the videos, and doing the lights, design, and visuals, and things like that. Where I can and also trying to keep things trying to get the biggest bang you can, get the most dialed in effect with the most simple things sometimes. I mean, it's not an easy thing to achieve, but you can achieve it with sleeves and all sorts of things. Sometimes there's ways you can do really awesome things that needn't be that expensive, but you have to spend a lot of time thinking about it. But, so yeah, I like doing all those different things and working with different people. It's Ice Age or Beach House or MGMT or whatever. I mean, these are all. It's in a way. I mean, it's like joining someone else's gang for a few months or well, forever a little bit. But it's a nice experience. It's fun, and yeah, I always learn a lot from the way different people work, and because a lot of people have their little tricks, their special little tricks. So it's always really nice to see how different people do stuff and how they think about it. And the more, I think, in anything in life, the more perspectives you can have of something, the more informed you are about it, and the better your understanding about everything. If you think everything's just about your perspective, particularly as a producer, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how much. I mean, the people would say Phil Spector and people like that were sort of dictatorial in the studio. Maybe a little bit, but I personally don't think that's a good way to work with people. I think it should be about an interaction, a conversation, and ultimately whatever it takes to get the best record out of them, and sometimes say at its the lowest level of it is sometimes just being an audience for them. People, if bands are rehearsing stuff like that, and they're just them rehearsing, they play one way. If someone comes to watch them rehearsing, they play a different way. So yeah, sometimes even that is can really, if you can get a really good performance out of someone. Again, we're back to the Jim Dickinson thing where he says, well, if you have the song, the rest is detail. Once you've got someone connecting with you and communicating with you in a way that you're feeling, you're already on good turf, I think.
So I know that a lot of your musical output is driven by the instruments that you acquire. What do you have around the house now that you're really excited about?
I'm going to sound really, really boring with a lot of these answers. You're going to be like, why does he do this? Well, my thing is as well that I mean, I have a lot of modular synth stuff, and I wouldn't let any of it go easily. But it might go years without me touching it sometimes. I mean, some of it I've had since the 90s, and every so often I do something with it, and I really get into the juice of what that thing does. But I don't like. I always had the same feeling with my guitar playing as well. I never wanted it to evolve too much, so I just don't spend that much time playing guitar. But it sounds like I'm as I said, I'm a non-musician who feels compelled to make music. Apparently, yeah. But I know how it goes with these things. That and some of these things. Also, I've spent a lot of time with some of these things in years gone by and decades gone by. So sometimes having a little break from them is nice. And but yeah.
And one other question I wanted to ask you is, you do a lot of remixes for people, and you did a remix of your own album even. Like, do you feel like a song is ever done?
Yes. Deadlines are good, and also, yeah, I do feel that some songs, but then I like quite minimal, arrangements with things as well. Even if they're dense, they're not made of too many things, but just good things, the right things, which I think is, craft work we're really awesome at. It's like, everyone knew their territory within the spectrum, and also within the timing. So the things keep out each other's way and play around each other in this really awesome way. So yeah, I aspire for that kind of a vibe, and occasionally I get lucky, I feel, and sometimes less so. But something Noah's very good at as well. He's very good at hearing where the gaps are. He's not someone who thinks the bass and the bass drum need to hit at the same time. But it's really awesome. I have to say, he does stuff the whole time. And I'm like, yeah, wow, that's really nice. He's very good at that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This has been amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking me to do it. Yeah. Nice one.
Thanks for listening to Devalued. For more information about our podcast, please visit devalued.show.